Welcome to Bird Fans Forever. This is episode 42. Remember, and YouTube, go out and like us for Bird Fans Forever. Smash the like button, subscribe. We love it. We have a podcast both in Apple and Spotify and Google. Get on Spotify. So our guest today is going to be Rob Gibbons. He played on 2 NIT teams. He played on 2 NCAA teams. He is part of the team that goes back-to-back Valley Conference champions and back-to-back, I love it, and back-to-back tournament champions. So we will be right back with our special guest, Rob Gibbons. Hello and welcome to Bird Fans Forever, episode 42 with my boy Rob Gibbons. He played at ISU from 1993 to 98. He is a red shirt as a freshman, played on 2 NIT teams, which I was going to talk about earlier, and I'll cut that crap out.
Don't waste the time.
Yeah, we'll clean that up. Rob's got a double-double against Wichita State. Rob is one of 10 players to play in 10 Missouri Valley State Conference games, and that is the record for ISU. I like to blow Gibby some grief about the Missouri Valley Conference game, getting 13 points. Missouri Valley Conference Championship game in 98. He got 13 points and 9 rebounds. He slacked it. He needed to get 10 to get a double-double. He is third all-time attempts in an NCAA game with 8. Mr. Gibbons, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing good. All right, so we're just going to roll. Gibby's going to just light this up. So how'd you get to ISU?
Oh, I like to ISU. Now, all right, so the majority of people probably already heard this story, but I'll go into it anyway. But no, I was my senior year of high school. I signed a scholarship letter of intent in November of my senior year with the school in George Mason, which was in Fairfax, Virginia, and that was a big deal in my family in our area because where I'm from in North Central Jersey was more wrestling and football, blue collar, and I was a basketball player, and I got that. I think it was the first Division I basketball player. Get a full scholarship out of my high school, and it meant a lot to my family because we had an old school Irish Catholic family. My dad was an engineer for the Army. My mom's a nurse. I'm one of 4, so it meant a lot to them that I got a scholarship. And it was Division I. They had a guy that was going to be out. He was a senior. Would have been a senior my freshman year, so I get to study under him and then get some real clock. And they could drive 3 or 4 hours to still see a game. So you fast forward to, and it took the pressure off. Your senior year, it was great because I had a scholarship. Everything was done. And so fast forward, they ended up going I think 8-21, and they had some things happen, and the coach ended up losing his job, but he lost it later. They moved him out later than they normally would if they were going to do that, and they brought in a gentleman named Paul Westhead with maybe a week to go before school started. I had been out on a trip with my buddies, and my buddies all played big time football, and so we went on one last hurrah together before they went off to camp. I walked to my house. Mom was on the phone back when phones were on the wall. She's kind of. My mom is a tough Irish bird. God bless her. She's still around. She's teary-eyed, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "That was the admissions office at George Mason." And I said, "Okay, they're looking forward to having me." She's like, "No, you don't have a scholarship." So it turns out that, I don't know if it was illegal or legal, but whatever it was 5-6 days before I was supposed to go to school. They yanked our scholarships, me and this other kid that was supposed to go there. And it was too late to go anywhere. It was too late to do anything. School had started a lot of other places. Rosters were full. So I was literally building houses and then subbing in for my friend who worked at a gas station with no place to go. And then I was coming home from work one afternoon. My family went away because they were locked into this vacation that we went to every year. So I was home by myself, and this guy called, and he was already talking when I picked up the phone. He says, "Hi, this is Harlan Slicker," and I remember seeing this guy at games, but I couldn't place it, but he's a white-haired gentleman, and I remember seeing him in the stands. And in my senior year of high school, I used to see him at these bigger games. And he said, "Hey," but I also used to see him in the gyms with Mr. Hurley and the AAU tournaments and stuff.
Right.
He's a gym rat, he's a basic gym rat.
Yeah.
He said, "I was at church today and I heard what happened to you." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to work." I think, "Well, that's what I'm going to do." He's like, "Oh, so you've got no options?" I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty much like it." And he said, "Well, listen, Mr. Hurley was a big fan of yours." And he's like, "I know some people. A friend of mine just took this job at Illinois State. I'll put a call into him and see what I can do." So I said, "Listen, anything you can do for me, man, would be fantastic. Thank you so much. I got to get to work." And then he called back a day or two later, and we started talking. He's like, "Well, they've got a great team, supposedly. He's new. he's like, would you be interested? I said, listen, I'll do anything. My father called back that night from vacation and said, you remember this guy, Mr. Slicker? I said, yeah, kind of. He said, well, you should, because he says he knows you, and he's going to pick you up tomorrow, take you to Illinois State. Yeah, then he hung up the phone. So this gentleman shows up at my house, and he shows up on a Saturday afternoon. I'd just gotten off work. He shows up in this Oldsmobile. My family was still away. I packed all my stuff in 2 black garbage bags, and then I threw him in the back of his trunk. My buddies gave me a couple of bucks for the road. He drove me 17 hours out to Illinois State. We got there on a Sunday early evening, like 5, 6 o'clock, and we pulled right into Redbird Arena, and he takes my stuff out. And by the way, the fall semester is supposed to start Monday morning.
Right.
And I never even heard of Illinois State. So he puts my stuff on the stairs, and he says, hey, you know what? I talked to Coach Stallings. I talked to King Rice, Coach Wilburn. They said they were going to meet us here. He's like, but I'm going to get a jump on the traffic. Take care. And he just gets in the car and leaves.
That bad traffic in Bloomington normal.
Yeah. Of course, as you know, as the story goes, no one shows up, right? So
Right.
I walk up, and I'm walking around the arena. I'm trying every door. And I went down. If you guys know the arena, there's the one spot where the truck come in. That's right by our locker room. So I went down there, and I bang it on the thing. And I want to say it was Tom or
Tom Young. Yeah, or Skip, yeah.
Right? Skip or Tom or one of those big dudes.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, big fella. I said, hey. I said, listen, I'm new on the team, and I left all my gear in the locker room. They're like, oh, we got you. Don't worry. So I followed the guy in the locker room, and it was a punch code on the door, so I couldn't get in. I said, hey, man, I forgot the code. And there was that odd silence where, I'm like, this guy knows I'm full of crap.
Yeah.
He goes, I got you. And he punches the code in. He goes, and when he wasn't looking, I stuck my shoe. Like there was shoes on the floor. I just stuck one by the door. And I waited a long time. And finally, he said to me, hey, big man, if you're okay, I'm going to head out for the day. He's like, just let yourself out. Walk out the same door you came in. No problem. I spent the next 2 days on the locker room floor. So
Wow.
I woke up the next day. I enrolled in some classes. And then they come in the locker room and they just hand out rolls, right? And no one really knew Coach Stallings that well yet. So
Right.
There, and in the Irish side, the Jersey side, I just started making things up. Guys are like, "Oh, hey, you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm one of Coach's boys." And the roll on and started playing in the North Gym. And then after one workout, I think it was the first day or something, Coach Rice walks up to me and goes, we start talking. But anyway, I enrolled in classes. They had no scholarships. So I walked on and I redshirted, paid my own way, working on jobs my freshman year, and then got the 4-year scholarship after.
Now, did you get to practice with him that redshirt year?
Did every single thing but playing against
And work an odd job.
And redshirting was the biggest scam going because I thought, I'll chill. I'll be the guy on the bench in a nice sweater or something. I got beat up every day in practice on the road.
I did the same thing you did, right? My sophomore, I got pneumonia as a sophomore. I redshirted. It is the toughest year. You do not get a break at all.
It was also the most fun because one of the most fun because it was new to me. I graduated high school with 93 people, and my first school starting Monday morning. I walked into. Her name was Beth something. She did all the scheduling for us, and she just
for college. Beth Landis.
Beth Landis. Beth Landis.
Yes, she did it for me too. Yeah.
Gave me a couple classes. The very first class I walked into was Tony O. was a teacher. And
Tony O. Loved Tony O.
Yep. Tony Ostrowski.
Yep.
And it was in the theater on campus. There was like 400 people in the class.
Yep.
I'm like,
Braden Auditorium.
Yeah. No, it wasn't Brady. It was the other one. I want to say not Steven. It might have been Stevenson.
Well, Stevens is the big lecture hall. Yeah. Braden was the theater.
Really old theater.
That's Braden.
That theater, and that was my first class. And I remember being like, "Oh."
And I had that class 10 years ahead of you in that same place. Yeah. My wife and I had Tonio. I took 4 semesters of economics. Yep.
And I was a book nerd, so I got it. But I didn't live with a guy. I didn't live with a guy on the team. My roommate was just a civilian, and we had, I think Waterston Towers was 38 floors. We lived on 35th floor, and we had a bowling alley that looked at a brick wall. And yet it was the most, the stories and the things that happened that freshman year. I became very good friends with Andy Porter. I don't know if you remember him. So it was Big Red. Big Red was his name, and to this day, even as good as we were, as all the fame and success we had, I still, to this day, have never met anyone more famous than that guy. Yeah. And I was that guy's side. Me, him, shout out to Donna, Mike Vandergaard. Mike Vandegaard.
Yep.
Mike Vandegaard and Chad were great to me from the moment I got on campus. They took care of me. I mean, I still talk to Chad literally every day. I was texting with him earlier.
Yeah.
You know, I've got Fred, but Andy Porter, we would be staying in, was it Jumers? Right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'd walk in from like using the phone in the lobby because he'd always make fun of me if I called home. And I'd come back in, and Vandegaard would be sitting there, and Red would be sitting there. I'd go in and take a shower, and the tub would be filled with Bud Lights and ice. That was a normal. I said, the tub is filled with ice and beer. He goes, it is a Tuesday. You know? He was funnier now, and we would go out like just, if you went out with him, you couldn't go to one party. You had to go to at least 4. And every single one we walked in, it was Big Red, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
That was my first year. It was just, and I came from like old school where my dad was like, why would you ever come home? So I never went home. You know what I mean? I got to know a lot of the campus life and being away, but it was that's how I got there in a nutshell.
So the next area we want you to hit on is your sophomore year, which is actually your freshman eligibility year, playing against Skip at East Carolina. This is a great story, so hit it.
Oh yeah, I hated him. I want to kill him because he killed us. So it was freshman year, and we go to we're at East Carolina, and I'm pretty sure it was over the break. It was over Christmas break.
January 11th, you lost 57-64 to East Carolina.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the game was crazy because, you know, ISU was closed down or whatever for students, and we're living in a hotel, whatever. You come in, you play, and it was nuts because there were beautiful girls everywhere. East Carolina was a total party zone. They were all cocktailing. It was loud as can be. And we get there, and before the game, there's this kid, good-looking dude, jacked up, looked like a quarterback. And he's out there, like, smiling. Because Skip had an annoying smile, right? Because he had that kind of, like, F-U smile. It was great. But he's out there, and he's shooting foul shots. And I'm out there warming up, whatever, and he's shooting. And he's shooting from, like, the 3, and then 2 steps behind the 3. And then by the freaking half-court line, I'm like, shit. So we end up playing them, and it becomes a dogfight, and it's going back and forth, and we choke it up at the end. And David Kaysen got stuck on a double play or something, and he kind of dribbled out, and he fell or something, and we ended up losing the game. And after the game, I came out of the locker room, and I'm just sick, right? And I come out there, and I'm sitting with Antonio Cooper, and we're watching, and then there's this guy shooting again. Right, he's got a T-shirt on. He's kind of and he's talking like Coach Stallings a little bit. He's shooting threes. He's got this quarterback dating the model kind of smile and look on him. And I remember turning to Coop and be like, Coop, you know what? You know, maybe you can look for a door I can run out of because maybe I'll just go over there and punch this guy right in the face. And like every now and then, I could have sworn that every now and then he'd be talking to Coach and he'd hit a shot because Skip, one of the best pure shooters I ever played with.
Amen.
Flat out stroke. I mean, I heard one of your stories about one of the podcasts I watched. Said, who would you rather have, Coop or Skip? And listen, I love Coop to death, but not even a doubt. Skip shaped out 100%. I mean, defense alone, toughness, shooting. He was a hell of a team. He was a great teammate. He was tough as nails. But that night, I hated him. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And, he kept looking over at me. I'm like, Coop, you know, let's just throw some at this guy. And he's shooting. At one point, he shoots, and it bounces off, whatever, and it rolls over by my feet, and I just wouldn't kick it. I wouldn't kick it over to him. And he kind of puts his hands up. He's like, you know, kind of this. I'm just like, and then he comes over to me and Coop, and he goes to pick up the ball, and I kick it away from him. Anyways, that was my first introduction to Skip. But the lousy thing was that night we couldn't get out. I get on the bus, and John Munn, our trainer extraordinaire, God love him, his face is just white. And when he had to deliver bad news to Coach, John nearly passed out or soiled himself. You know what I mean? So, I get on the bus, and John's face is just kind of like, oh. And I said, what's the problem, John? What's the matter? He goes, we can't get out tonight. I'm like, what do you mean you can't fly out tonight? He goes, yeah. I'm like, oh, you know. So we go back to this hotel, and the hotel was beat down, and we get in the room like 2 minutes. Phone rings, and it's Coach Rice or Coach Wilburn, and they're like, hey, you know, we're going to come down to the media room, you know, come down here, we're going to do tape. And we watched the entire game. Oh. And I just remember, like, you could have heard a mouse pissing in cotton in that room. All sitting there just like sick. And the bad thing was, this is where one of my first tastes, I mean, I had a few of them early on, but one of the real first examples of how Coach Stallings was just a ruthless, you know, he win it all cost guy. At the end of the game, we gave up a couple turnovers, and David had a tough time. We turned it over, and he was still amazing, David Kaysen, but he had a tough game at the end of it. And Coach kept playing it back. You know what I mean? And we're all just sitting there. And all of a sudden, you feel like you're looking at the Zapruder film. You know, it's like back to the left, back to the left. And I just felt, and it really taught me a lot, because I saw how upset Coach was about execution. But then to have somebody like David Kaysen, who the young guys, him, Chad, and Brian Kern, they were amazing captains, amazing. Yeah. And to see how upset David Kaysen was, and then to see Coach keep playing that back, by the end of that meeting, I wanted to tackle Coach Stallings.
Right.
But it was a great example of what the cost is and how serious we take this and what this means. You know, and it was a great lesson. Yeah. It was a crappy road trip, but it was it was a good learning experience, put it that way.
All right, so Rob, after the Wisconsin game, I felt that's when I saw this team turn it around, and I knew you guys had something special. When did you think you had something special?
No, you're talking about Wisconsin in the NIT.
In the NIT, not your senior year. After that game, I didn't think you guys had something special. But the NIT game, I thought there was something special.
Oh yeah, no, there was a special night. It certainly was. It was one of the better games I've ever been when I was a Redbird. I used to love playing on the road more than anything. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was fun, always fun playing at home, but on the road was the best, because there's nothing you could say to coming into someone's house, beating their ass, and then going home. And then go there. I mean, when we were there, that's the old gym. It was jammed. They were pouring sodas on us at the they were screaming at us, and we had a big section, I remember, of Redbirds, and we gave them the beatdown. And the funny thing was is that we win there, but when that game ended, I think we won by 15 or something like that.
I'm checking right now. 77-62.
Yeah, Rain Man with the stats over there, right?
That's 15.
No. Rain Man has got the on a monitor above this screen.
You're not supposed to tell that, Pam. You're supposed to be like, "Oh, I got it." And just do it.
Everybody knows I'm dyslexic and can't get any of the number of times I've gotten. Oh yeah, you did this, and then we don't fact check and I'm wrong.
Hey, listen, you're among friends.
Wrong.
We can smell our own. But,
keep rolling, boy.
If we had 5 or 6 more minutes, that would have been 20, 25, because they couldn't do anything at that point. We locked them up, and we were better prepared. Like I said, I played there 4 years. We were never out-coached. I mean, that was the thing. But I think, for me personally, when I think it changed, in fact, I know when it changed, was the next year, not just the summer, but we were at Wisconsin. And I knew it changed because I saw everybody come back that junior year, that summer. Everybody put in the work, and different caliber then. But at Wisconsin, my junior year, we were down 15 at the half. And we came back and we won by 9. And I remember, which is kind of crazy because if memory serves me, I think we lost the very next game, my junior year. But anyway, there's just something that clicked. And I just remember, because every year that we went to Wisconsin, it was literally a dogfight, and we barely won. And I hated those guys too. The coach was always kind of a jerk, and the players were, our senior year, I'll tell you about that, but there were such a bunch of clowns. You know what I mean? They're always trying to fight us and everything else. I was like, guys, stop. But my junior year, they had us down bad. Like I said, it was down 15 at the half. And it was at the halftime. I remember even Coach Wilburn, like getting into everybody, Coach Rich and Coach Rice. It was kind of like one of those things where, okay, you dig this hole. Now let's see what you're really made of. And that team really clicked and came together. And to beat someone by 9 after being down 15, that's a 24-point swing. And they were lucky to get out of there when they did. And it was great because when we were walking off the floor at the end of the first half, people were whistling, giving us all kinds of business. Their players were. I remember walking the hallway, and one guy's like, "Ooh, are you sure you want to play the second half?" You know, all this crap. and then to come out there and we beat them. I just remember personally, it was like me and Dan or Rico walking extra slow up the ramp and waving goodbye to everybody. But yeah, that to me was the turning point when I knew that this could be really something great. No. Good question, Steve.
Dude, you're supposed to just keep rolling. What was the next story you want to tell?
I'm happy.
It's the Rob Gibbons show, not the Steve Thate show.
Great.
Nobody wants to hear about us. We want to hear about you.
Well, if that's the case, sure, I'll keep rolling. I mean, that year, okay, so you go into it. So you go the rest of that year, most of the games in the late part of the season are an absolute dogfight. And then you get into the Valley tournament, and we get to the second round, and I remember how big that game was, the second round, because we were playing Northern Iowa. Jason Daisy had gotten off on us twice that season, and he was a damn good player. And just to show you how good of a coaching staff we had, they broke it down, and we did everything we could on film, and we were over-prepared. But that game took everything, the Northern Iowa game. It took everything. We beat them. So I don't know if we had anything left in the tank for that championship game. And then it comes down to, okay, guys, it's a championship game. You find a way. That kind of thing.
You find a way.
You find a way.
Yep.
It's simple as that. And I, to this day, I still say that to the people I work with. The world is burning. And I'm like, listen, when I panic, that's when you can panic. And they're like, well, what do you think we should do? I said, we'll find a way. It's as simple as that. And then we beat Steve Alford and
Missouri State.
In the finals. Yeah. And that was it's always great to win your first one. But me personally, there was nothing like that senior year because, again, we had no seniors. And it was the exact same crew coming back. And everyone worked even harder over the summer. We got together at the beginning of the summer or midway through summer, 2 weeks, and then we went to Europe. So we got back, I remember, over the summer, and we had a coach wanted to practice 2 weeks. And it was great because it wasn't much pressure. We were practicing like 90 minutes, almost 2 hours a day. And it was more like working out, making sure everybody's back in sync. But I remember going home one night after practice and grabbing a bite to eat with Dan. And Dan, we're looking at each other, and we're like, man, we're really good. And Dan, he's like, we're really, really good this year. I said, we got everything. You know what I mean? Right. And it felt good because everybody was healthy at that point. Smiley was still kind of in limbo land for a little bit with what was going on, but the elements were there, right? But it's funny because, you learn about these things later in life, and in business, there's a saying that nothing ever fails like success. And then we go into that season, you're pre-season 15, you got a player of the year, Rico Hill, you got the best coach in the conference, hands down, you got Dan Muller, who was multiple defensive year. I mean, everybody was back at the best point guard. We had our Hulk. A lot of teams say, oh, we had this, and my kids watch the Marvel movies. When I'm referring to Leroy Watkins, I'm like, yeah, Hulk. You know what I mean? Because still to this day, God bless him. And I played against. I took an elbow from Anthony Mason and put me out cold on the floor. I can tell you, Leroy was harder to get around than Anthony Mason. You know what I mean? The strongest player I've ever played with, and the quickest second jumper. Because I knew that I could fake Leroy up once, even if I got him, even if I got the second, the shot up quick. His second jump was so damn quick. And on top of that, he's a southpaw. So it was, but all the elements were there. And then we went to Europe, had a good time. We started off the season a little bit rough. I think it got to a point where it might have been we lost at Hawaii, against Hawaii or something.
You did lose to Hawaii. Yeah.
You did.
Yeah. I'll give you the inside. So go back a little bit. So that spring, I want to say that spring, early summer, Dan Muller calls me and he says, hey, we're going to go out to dinner with Coach Stallings. And I'm like, who died? One of those things. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. He's like, yeah. And the deal was we were going to ask him to kind of back up a little bit, make it a little bit more enjoyable or something.
How was that going to work out for you?
Exactly. By the way, I was raised in a very similar house as to how I was coached. And I knew this was a disaster. And by the way, I was very open. I'm going to say this, and Dan can deny it, and Skip, and Steve, and they're all full of crap because I was like, this is a bad idea. And you know what? Because I remember, the point was this, though. We were 17-3 our junior year, and it was me, Smiley, and Dan were the captains. And I remember we had practice one day, and between film and practice, he called us up to his office, and Stallings was like, what the hell's the matter? I said, what do you mean? And he's talking to three of us. He's like, doesn't look like anyone's having any fun. And I remember Smiley or Dan being like, yeah, we're not. And it was true because we were 17-3, but we were going so hard. I mean, that was the coach's thing. And I watched him, the coach that he was my redshirt freshman year to the coach that he was my senior year was, you want to talk about a growth process, right? I mean, it was midway through the season, our junior year, and we were still pounding each other for hours a day, working out. And it got to the point where we're 17-3, and we're like, oh, really? We are? We didn't even know. So this kind of carried over into that. And I guess with winning the championship, winning the league, guys got a little bit ahead of themselves, like, oh, maybe we'll just ask Coach to cool out a little bit. I'm like, yeah, we'll just give Charles Manson a shot.
Wait, let me interrupt you for a second. You're 17-3 that junior year with a loss to Duquesne, an overtime loss to UNI at home, and an overtime loss to UNI on the road.
Yeah.
Right? So those two overtimes, one switch of a play, and now you're you're 17-3. You're 19-1, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Well, if you look at senior year, right? Senior year was the best because we beat the hell out of everybody, and essentially we only lost 2 conference games, and it was the same team, and then we beat their ass in the finals. So essentially, if you look at the conference, we were arguably 19-2 our senior year. But the difference is that, when you go back, that junior year was much harder because anytime you win your first, it's always, it takes that much to climb.
Right.
We go to this.
You're getting everybody's best shot, right?
Well, senior year, yeah. I'll get to that.
Yeah.
You were kind of the Yankees of the Missouri Valley, But senior year, so we go to this dinner, and I'm already like, this is bad news. And Coach, what was funny, because out of the 5 years I played with this guy, and I've known him now like 30 years, I can tell you, I've only seen this guy surprised maybe twice. You know what I mean? I just remember he got all excited because we invited him out. Because this man is he was a savant. The guy's a brilliant guy. Far more than people even know, because he's such a tough exterior. He doesn't really care about fans or people or anything like that. If it was up to him, it would be both teams, 2 refs, in a neutral gym. That's how I kid you not. So we go to dinner, and he's kind of in this great mood, and he goes, well, listen, there's something going on. You guys called me here. You worried about something? And I had hoped we had already ordered dessert at that point. I'm like, oh, here we go. And then Dan spoke up, and Dan said, Coach, we got everybody back. We think it's going to be a great year. You know what it was? It was after we got back from overseas. That's when it was. So it was around the fall preseason of our senior year.
Right.
Okay.
And Dan was like, Coach, we just want to make this year really special. We want to enjoy it. We want to enjoy it more as a team. We're hoping. And Coach is like, great, I'm all for it. What do we do? Winning is good. And Dan was kind of like, we want you to kind of ease up on us a little bit. And I'm just like, I'm kind of looking for
You're like, I got to go to the bathroom.
Oh, man. You get to check my friend's
check.
Getting a food poisoning. But I said that. I heard that. It was kind of like when someone says something, the record just kind of skips in the background. And he was kind of like, oh, okay. And to his credit, he kind of gave it to us, that opportunity. So then you fast forward, right? And your season starts. Now, if you remember the beginning of the season, he was the top choice for a bunch of different jobs.
Yeah.
And I do remember everyone was kind of like, and this is one of the times I'll be the first to admit I was kind of maybe a jerk at the time, but I still stand by it. He was looking at one job, and then he didn't take it, and he was maybe offered another job, maybe Michigan or something else.
Yeah, Michigan was one.
But it was the second one. Whatever it was the second one. And the first one, I was like, hey, God bless, if you're going to, I think it might have been Tennessee. If you're going to get this job, you're working, you got to get a better career and everything else. I understand, But then a week or two went by, and he was up for I want to say it was a Michigan job. And he came to me and said, so what do you think? I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I'm being considered for this job. I said, good for you. God bless you, Coach. And he said, well, what are your thoughts? I said, I think you leaving now would be awful. I said, I don't think that's cool. And he looked at me, and I remember my stomach tightening. And I just remember saying to him, Coach, listen, we started something great. Season's already getting underway. For you to leave now, this book's got to finish. And I just remember saying that, and it took a lot to say it, but I was honest. I was like, man, I'll be really pissed if this guy leaves. And people can say, oh, they wish him well. Bullshit. I wanted to win, and I knew he was the guy to help us do it. And we could have gotten the best coach ever, but at the time, he was the best coach ever for us. Right. And then, you go into that season, and again, not to get too far off on a tangent, but that season started off rocky because I think we lost to Hawaii at Hawaii, and we just been playing bad. We had trouble.
You lost at Wisconsin.
We lost at Wisconsin bad. Smiley flips out at the half and after the game at Steve Hansel because Smiley couldn't play for one reason or another. And I think
really, one reason or another?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thought he was cold.
He talked about why he couldn't play, so we're good with that. So just keep on going.
He was auditioning for Days of Thunder Part 2, so that's
Wisconsin was 24th. The next week,
they could have been number 400. It's one of those nights where you get into the game and you're just the other team's moving at a different speed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you look back, and I want to say, in my entire career as a Redbird, I think maybe just once or twice in the first 2 years, after that we never lost back-to-back games, right? Never, because you did not want to play the wounded bear because you knew no matter what loss we did, we were getting beat down, and we were going to be damn sure we fixed whatever went wrong.
Absolutely.
And the next game is against Pittsburgh. who
which is also 24.
And we
cracked
beat-
the top 25, and you beat the crap out of them.
You
I was at that game.
crushed them.
Like
I
20
think
some
we had them
points.
down. At one point, they were down 30. Yeah, we had them down 30.
Beat
And
them by 22. Yep.
so right around that time, the team was kind of going, all over the place, whatever. And
Yeah.
we, coach kicked us out of our locker room, and we had to stay. We were kicked out of our locker room, and we were now moved into the visiting team's volleyball, women's volleyball locker room or something, right?
Because
Yeah.
he's taking it easier on you now.
Well, no, and that was back to because when we lost, and I want to say when we lost one game and he lost it. So not only was he pissed about the loss, his memory's like, oh, you want me to take it easy? This kind of thing.
Right.
He got double the sauce after that, right? So we get kicked out of our locker room senior year and no amenities. Like we were living the high life. And now we're staying in this locker. We're fighting over lockers every day. I think the showers were they were not working that well. And to his credit, though, one of the guys, brilliant, and he literally, I take the physics model with a lot of things. I solve problems for a living, so I break them down to their simplest parts and then try to reconnect them. That's essentially what he did with that team. He broke it down and just said, okay, we're going to do it my way again, and everybody. Because listen, I'd be lying. There was tension even among the coaches in the beginning of the year that we weren't privy to, and God bless them. I only knew about kind of afterward because I was more in tune to things, and I graduated early, But I could tell, when it was game time though, it was on. It was game time. They never dragged that stuff around us, but I could just tell there was a weird air about it. So you had all that going on. Then you had us getting out of the locker room, and then anytime you rank preseason and you lose early, it's always like, oh Jesus, and it's an uphill climb. And then I want to say that turning point came where it could have gone seriously south, and then we go to Wisconsin Green Bay, and that was we're going to Wisconsin Green Bay. I want to say 20th of December.
November 18th, you're there, and you lose to them 80 to 66
at Wisconsin Green Bay.
Oh, Wisconsin Green
December,
Bay,
yeah, right
That's
before
December
Christmas.
20th, yeah.
December 20th. Okay, so in 5 years of college, I went home for Christmas, I think twice. Right, never made a spring break.
Yeah.
Just college basketball is the longest sport in college. It always is because if you're even decent, you're in the postseason, so you're not getting any fun time. Christmas break, you're in a hotel, your apartment. Thanksgiving, you're in a tournament. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining because you also get to do things that no one else gets to do. Right? I went to Hawaii.
Amen.
So, but that year, the way the calendar fell, we were going to get 2 days. And I remember calling my family and be like, hey, I'm going to get 2 days for Christmas. My dad's like, you still live here? That kind of thing. And it was a big deal. And I remember flying there, and it was still rocky because we were fighting each other. They were fighting us, that kind of thing. In any great team, there's always a we day, right? When you go on the road, it's you, your coaches against the world. But when you're in practice, it's offense versus defense or starters versus next crew, even at times where it's team versus coaches. And it was kind of like that. There was a lot of crap going on. And we go to Wisconsin Green Bay, and it was kind of like, if you bastards don't turn it around now, no one's going home for Christmas. Like one of those things. And I just remember, of course, we get into a dogfight with Wisconsin Green Bay. And it's in this garbage hockey rink across from Lambeau. Right?
Yep.
And I want to say, and
Brown County Arena.
Correct me if I'm wrong. If you go back, I'm pretty sure this was on a Sunday. Okay? So we're playing this game. The Packers were home. And I might be crazy, or maybe maybe Jesus decided to hand out pretzels at the half. We go into the half of that game, and when we came back in for the second half, there were a lot more people, and they were in no shape to go to church, if you know what I mean. Right? So it comes down to a dogfight, and I remember it's going back and forth, and we start losing a little bit. I just remember looking over, and you should ask Kyle or Dan about one of those things. You remember Joe Hine?
Yes.
Joe Hine. We had a lot of funny characters on that team. That senior year, I'm trying to think. There was a lot of really, really funny dudes on that team. With the exception of Stotler or Van Velzen or everybody was dry as hell, that kind of thing. And Joe, I look over at one point and I think we're flopping back and forth and coach is getting fired up. And it's a dogfight. We let them back into it. Their confidence is getting up. And we all know that if we lose, we're not going home.
Yeah.
So if you don't go home, you got a couple days off. You're going to get the crap kicked out of you. And I just remember looking over Joe Hine's face, and he's just sick. He's just, and he looks over at me and Ben, and he says, "Rico's ruining my Christmas." But then we won. we ended up beating them.
Well, and Kyle talks about that right in his episode. He's the one who takes the shot to put us up 2.
Yep.
And he even said in his episode that he didn't want to make the shot to win the game.
Yeah.
He wanted to make the shot so you guys could go home for Christmas.
That's right. That's what I thought about. Because you know what it was, man? It was a lot. We came on campus the 2 weeks to go to Europe. We go to Europe, and then so you missed, like, you didn't get your full summer, that kind of thing.
Right.
Europe was amazing, don't get me wrong, but it was like long, and you're going into the season, you're already in like mid-season shape, and then but that game, I remember, like, I want to say we're 5-3, something like that, before we played them. So if you think about it,
5-3, and then you went to 6-3.
And you play them, 6-3 is a big difference than 5-4.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So we go home. So that was, for me, that was the kind of the new spark that rekindled, that relit the flame for the rest of the season. I mean, on top of that, from that point, we went off on a hell of a roll. We went. I want to say we had Pacific in our place. They had Oliver Candy. We beat them.
Yeah.
And we went on the road a couple times. I want to say, we went at Wichita, beat them up, and then somewhere around there, you sprinkle in. We had a letdown at Southwest Missouri State. Things got haywire. They teed us up. They teed me up, which is
they
rare.
scored like 90 some points that game.
Senior night, senior year. A special night. It was. We all got to say goodbye to a remarkable team. I always argue because when we first got to campus, you guys remember Matt Taphorn, right?
Yeah.
Played
Matt
well.
Taphorn. So
I had classes with him.
Okay, so jokingly or anecdotally, I still bust his chops about this. He told Smiley and I when we first got on campus that we'd be lucky if we ever finished we would never finish like second or something like that, right? So every time we talk about the team,
Wait. Never finished like second in the
never finished
Valley?
higher than second. That's what he said to us. Kidding around. I mean, this is 93, 94. He didn't know any better.
Yeah.
That said, we never finished lower than second. My 4 years.
Right.
2 years.
Right.
But then I always say that we were the most successful team in Illinois State history, and then also in Missouri Valley history. And no one, you could check the record books, no one has ever won 2 conference titles and postseason conference titles back to back in the 140-year conference that's been around. No one's ever done that, right?
Yeah.
So that's our claim to fame. But I will say that, like, there was games every year that stick out. I remember my freshman year, we swept Southern Illinois, arguably one of the best teams I've ever played against as a team. With Chris Camarno. That was our first hugger on the road. We won my freshman year with Kaysen and Big Kern and Charles Donna. We beat them, and then we beat them in double overtime in our place. But I mean, go back to senior year when it hit that switch with Wisconsin and Green Bay, and then it was on. And it was a great year because of so many different things. But everyone knew their role, and what doesn't get talked about enough is one of the bigger reasons why that team was as good as it was. One was the character of the people. I mean, you had a group of guys that really loved each other, got along, were like each other's brothers.
Right.
And not to have any seniors our junior year was big. But what doesn't get talked about enough is that the reason why that team was as good as it was also because of the guys that didn't play all the time. So there were guys like Joe, Ben Holmstrom, L.D. Murdoch, Sean Riley, Ron Van Belzen, Stotler, and KP, and Kyle, like all these guys, that were like guys 6 through 12, 6 through 11. Like those guys, a lot of those guys could have played or started at other schools in the Valley, and you're banging and battling those guys every day. I mean, I've learned it all my life. The only reason I got anywhere was because I always played against bigger and better guys. And it's like that business. You want to be around millionaire. You want to be a millionaire, you got to hang out with millionaires, that kind of thing. They make you better. And that was true. I can personally say that my senior year, I had a battle, L.D. Murdoch, Sean, Ben, every day. And that's why, one of the reasons why my play went up, because when Leroy and I were working as a tandem, we would wear guys down because you didn't want to play against Leroy Watkins. And then I would come off the bench and I'd do the same thing. And it's like by the second half, those inside guys, like how's a Danny Moore going to how's a Danny Moore going to compete energy-wise with with Leroy and me? It's not going to happen. Right. And then try to guard Rico and or Dan. And that's what we got. We just used to out-execute people because we were so well coached, because we were so well disciplined. And that carried over into everything. I mean, you see that team, there were 6 seniors. And on senior night, personally, I had fun with it, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it didn't feel like the job was done. I was getting ready to go down to me, we still had 3 games to win in St. Louis, and it was, we got to cut nets down in the NCAA tournament. And then, but that's this whole year, like, there's something to be said. There's nothing better, right, than saying you're going to do something and going out and doing it. It's the best thing in the world. And then when we won our junior year, we had everybody back. We were that hunted bear our senior year. And I think Steve was saying it earlier, you go on the road and you're getting everyone's best shot.
Best shot, yes.
Right? Like we're on the road. I remember being on the road at the hotel. We're getting taped up to play Indiana State. And Luke Yaklick, which is one of our managers, who's now the coach at UIC.
Yeah.
Says, he's like, I got something for you. I said, what's up? He said, they sold out this game. Indiana State. I said, oh.
Wow.
And he said, yeah, last time he did it, was Larry Bird's last game.
Yeah.
And then you go in, and I think it was a day game or early evening game, but you're driving in a tunnel. There's fans screaming at you. You're yelling at you. I mean, to me, that was just, you never get to see stuff like that, right? And then going out and doing it, it's the best. There's nothing, and it stays with you, right? Like, there's an old saying that greatness, no matter how brief, always stays with a man. And I can tell you, those years, as far as defining us, building guys, teaching how to be accountable, teaching how to win. I mean, you graduated 6 seniors on that team. You had one guy played 10 years plus in Europe, in Leroy. You had Rico go to the NBA, who was a year younger than us. Dan played professionally. Steve Hansel played professionally. Skip could have easily played professionally.
Yeah.
Smiley is still an agent in the NBA. I mean, guys went on and had amazing lives, amazing careers.
Right.
And, there's nothing else that would have been, you couldn't have written that story better, right? And I think the way it finished was tough because we got a tough seed with Arkansas, with Arizona, getting their best swing. But at the same time, we don't have our starting guard.
Two guards.
Right, and 2 guards, you know what I mean?
Come on.
And I think, I want to say...
And you took the lead at the beginning of the second half.
Oh, no, yeah.
Arizona. Yeah.
Listen, I sent you some pictures. You can pull one of them up. In fact, one of them's around here. Not this big.
That's awesome.
No, but there's a picture. Hang on. I have it here.
Yeah, if you took it through me, I'll put it up over our faces while you're talking about
it. It's a picture of me hugging Leroy Watkins, and we're both kind of like losing it. Right? And it was, I'll never forget it. They started making a little bit of a run. And Clark Kellogg's one of the best in the game at calling games, and he has the spurt ability, as we always joke about, because he said that about Arizona when they were previewing us in the game. He's like, they got the spurt ability. And I remember checking out of the game, because I played okay to that game. And by the time I checked out, got water and came over, I could hear the crowd. They were going on a run, because this guy came off the bench and hit like, swap, hit a couple threes, and then was going line. It was Jason Terry. And the next thing you know, you turn around, you're down. And that there's certain moments I remember about my collegiate career. That was, to me, the most painful thing I've dealt with all 5 years. Because when I saw that there was no way we could do anything, and the game was kind of those last few minutes were bleeding out, going back to that locker room was the low point of my 5 years. And it was the most emotional, worst, a room full of grown men just bawling, you know what I mean?
Right.
Crying.
Yeah.
I remember saying to the team, next to my family, this was the best thing I was ever part of.
Right.
And I still feel that to this day. And I will say this. I was very fortunate to play where I did, to have the coaches I did, to have the people look after me. I mean, I got the greatest education. I'm sitting here in front of you guys today because I got to play for that man. And Jeff Wilbur, King Rice, and Tom Richardson. But out of all the things I did in high school, college, played in the pros, played with Magic Johnson, played 4.5 years over Europe, easily the highest achievement I ever got as a basketball player, as any kind of athlete, and even, I'll say this personally, one of the highest things in my life, next to my kids being born, was the day I got elected to be a captain of that team. There's nothing that even comes close. You talk about winning games and things like that and championships, it's amazing. But walking into a preseason meeting our junior year, and we used to have a meeting when everybody got back on campus, and Coach Jones, at the end of the meeting, announcing that who the captains were. He says, and this year's captain is going to be Dan Muller, Jamar Smiley, and Rob Gibbons. And my heart sunk because I was waiting. I was looking around waiting to see if everyone's laughing. And then I just remember like a switch flipping, if it makes any sense. Once someone that you have so much respect for, and I always used to go to practice trying to live up to my teammates because they were always so good.
Right.
I never felt like I was, it was me and maybe Nick who were struggling to get there, talent-wise. I always thought that if I could have a breakout game, maybe I could stick around. It's kind of like a little bit of imposter syndrome. You don't know if you'd be there. But then to get elected as a captain by your peers, by these coaches, and have trust in you, it's not – I coach people on it now about the mental game. The last 2 years, never missed a practice, never missed a sprint, never missed a game.
Right.
And I had great leaders ahead of me, Chad and David and Brian and those guys showing how it was. Yeah, and it makes all the difference. It makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
With those guys especially, and then like I said, to do it, because I remember, I'll never forget this. You walk into Stallings' office, end of our junior, and he was great because he said, we're all feeling good about ourselves. We got beat up by Iowa State. We had Kelvin Cato got off. But if you watch that game, and I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass, but I hit a few jumpers deep, and I missed one jumper in the second half from the foul line. Had I would have hit that, I'm not saying we would have won, but it would have been a little bit different because he would have had to come out, and Leroy could have done his work. Yeah. But I'll tell you a quick story about that.
Okay, there was a play though too.
Yeah.
Where a couple plays. That game was closer than people realized.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys had a chance to win that game.
Great game. You were in it and just had to foul at the end, right?
Here's one of the reasons why we may have lost. My teammates may get pissed. So we're in a hotel, and this is the night before the game, and I'm Leroy's roommate. And I had the door open a little bit, and Leroy's coming out of the shower. He's nothing on. He's got his towel on. And I'm over by the door. I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm like, hey, Leroy. I'm like, check this out. And he goes over by the door, and I pull the door open. I push him out. I steal his towel. And I lock him out. 6'7", 300, totally naked, with 3 old women walking down the hallway. and he's smashing the door to get in, and he actually cut his hand a little bit. And if you watch that game on the sidelines and on the tape, a couple timeouts, you could see him kind of fiddling with his hands. I may have cost us an NCAA game. It's 30 years ago, so Stallings, he may be at my front door by the end of the show. It was, that was it. Like I said, it was amazing. We finished our junior year, and after we win the league and stuff, and he says, well, you know what? Anybody can do anything once. I just remember being like, okay. But the point is that to do something again, that's the part that makes it.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can win the lotto once, marry the dreaming girl, or do this. Anybody can do anything once. But to be able to come back and repeat it, then you really can say something. And like I said, greatness stays with people. I've been able to do that again with business and stuff like that. And it's never felt as good as it did. But to do it our senior year and to go down to St. Louis and beat up everybody. We beat Southern. We beat the hell out of Wichita. And then and it was just so fitting to play against that same crew. The only crew that beat us during the season, and that lovely coach Steve Alford, oh Christ, and then beat those guys up.
You beat them back-to-back years in the championship game.
Yeah, back-to-back year, and it was much closer our junior year because, like I said, we didn't have damn near anything in the tank, but then our senior year was kind of like we got this one, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, you beat Wichita State by 24.
Yeah.
You beat Southern by 10, and you beat Missouri State by 10. So, yeah.
They were closer on paper than I think they were in the game. I remember going to Wichita State our senior year because, like I said, you get everyone's best shot. All of a sudden, you're going to Drake, and Drake's coming at us like yelling at us, like they're going to play out their butts that day. It's like, okay, guys.
Yeah.
And you have to weather what we were coached to do. If you watch, there's a great – I was watching this a couple of years ago. I'll never forget joking with my buddy. If you watch the end of the Tennessee game, and you see when Dan hits that shot. First of all, I don't know if you watch. I'm sure you watched it. Dan's open.
Yeah, we broke it down, and
he's wide open early in the play. And I remember being next to Ben, and Ben be like, like going bananas.
Right.
He's wide open at the first start of the play, but they don't see him. But anyway, if you go to my freshman or sophomore year, we're at Virginia Commonwealth. Same kind of play. We go up, and we go up by 1 with a couple seconds left. And this was on the way to being Christmas break. And they inbound the we score. We're about to win the game. We're not paying attention. They inbound the ball. The guy goes up to half court, three-quarter court, chucks it, ball goes in, we lose the game. Ruins our Christmas.
Right.
We got one day of Christmas. We came back on campus. We got the piss kicked out of us in practice for the next 5 years. since that point in time, we were always so execute. Nothing can get left unturned. Nothing, And it's funny because you watch that game, and Dan hits the shot, and then as soon as the ball goes in, myself, even the guys in the team, Ben, Smiley, even Smiley on the floor, everyone, we were all screaming, man up, get the guy, because we were so trained. And I'm pretty sure you can see it. Steve, Dan goes and almost gets in the guy's face.
Well, and I broke that down in the video. You can see at the end, if you watch the end of Dan's episode and the end of Kyle's, all four of them in unison are from this side to this side, and guys are splitting to pick up guys. And I mean, it is like a ballerina. It is a thing of absolute beauty.
He gets off. I forgot what. He got off a decent shot.
Yeah, about 40 feet, but he had Dan's hand in his face. But everybody else is covered, and everybody else is blocking out, so there isn't another opportunity, And Kyle gets the rebound, and it is a thing of absolute beauty.
I sent you a picture, but that's what that was. It's funny because I never really coached. I coached 1 year at my wife's high school back in Massachusetts, but I'm around the game again. We moved back to New Jersey about 4 years ago. And I reconnected Mr. Hurley and all the guys I used to play with, and now my sons are playing. And I see some local guys, whatever. It's funny because, playing for, Mr. Hurley's AU teams or Newark Rams or Jersey Roadrunners, being around that level of basketball, being teammates with guys like Dan and Skip and Smiley and Ben, and then being under Coach Stallings, King Rice, those guys for 5 years, I actually have forgotten more about X's and O's than most of these guys remember, right? They even know. So when you watch a game, we literally just used to out-execute people, especially the second half of that senior year. And that just goes to show you, because if there's 9 seconds or less, 9 or less, you call a timeout, 10 or more, you go, no matter what. Just stupid things like that, right? And it's so funny because that play, after he gets that shot off and he misses, I run out onto the court and I hug Dan gently. I'm like, I thought it was VCU all over again. One of those. But it was, there's not enough. It's nostalgic. I get emotional when I think about it because those guys were such a big part of each other's lives. I mean, literally, they're my best friends. I mean, I still talk to them.
We'll love having you on. We'll have you on again. We're planning to do a get together with all five. And then, so if fans want, I have the Rob Gibbons episode from Mondays with Dan out on Bird Fans Forever on the YouTube channel. You can go watch that episode, and he'll talk about the magic and then that and that stuff. So if you want to hear those stories, they're out there also. So Rob, this is where we wrap up, and so the floor is yours to close in episode 42.
Oh, okay. So thank you again for having me. This is great. I don't get to talk about the good old days as much. I'm sure. I don't think anyone would care except guys like you and guys like me, that kind of thing.
Right? Yeah.
I had an amazing experience. I'll never forget it. I'm still, to this day, I'm blessed to say that I'm still super tight with a lot of those teammates. The times that we had were absolutely hysterical. I mean, there's not enough tape, there's not enough podcast time to go into all of them. But very, very fortunate to have the people in my life that I did help shape me. Can't thank the coaching staff enough, especially Kevin Stallings, King, and Wilburn and those guys. And just, being together and being a part of that. I got 2 degrees. I got to spend some of the greatest years of my life. And, you get a little bit older and you start to realize how important it is to have these people in your life. And like I said, I got very, very fortunate to experience, a level of greatness that not many people do. And God bless it. It stayed with me my whole life. And I've got, somebody reminded me recently, right around the time you asked me to do the show, somebody said, "Oh, I have a media guide." Somebody was texting me, and it was a media guide from 1994, and it said, they do the player profiles, and it said, and it was, what is your dream? And my dream was to be married to a beautiful woman with 4 kids who can cook. And I got really lucky because that's exactly what I have today. The beautiful wife, the 4 kids. She's an okay cook. But no, I couldn't be happier to have the experiences I had. Wouldn't have gone anywhere else, and certainly wouldn't have done it with any other guys. Couldn't be thankful enough for that. And we got plenty of show to talk about next time because I put these all over my neighborhood once a year. So,
and before we go, we got to say one thing. Yeah. So off the air, you said Jamar Smiley was the greatest point guard you ever played with. And you played. No, you said the greatest. And you played with Magic Johnson. So Jamar, we didn't get it on tape, but you said it. No, you said it.
Played with Magic Johnson, Brevin Knight, and Bobby Hurley. And to this day, and Harold Ellis played with him. I mean, I played with some great point guards, and he's easily up there with the best.
See that, Jamar? You're loved by at least one of your teammates. Yeah. All right. So this has been episode 42 with Rob Gibbons. Gibby, thank you so much, man. It was an honor getting to watch you play. Loved it. Got to run with you during the summers.
That's right.
And so with that,
I remember that.
What's that?
To knock me around.
Oh,
this guy's coming in. He's alumni. I'm like, hey, man, how's it going? And he gives you an elbow. I'm like, shit, when did this happen?
All I can say is I'm 10. At that point, I'm like 31, 32. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot keep up with you and Leroy and Rico, right? It was an LD. I mean, it was just pain. So
some of those guys never got tired. Dan
never got tired.
Skip, Crowley, never got tired.
Yeah, never got tired.
An elbow was a Bob Donald handshake.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Right. Okay, so this has been episode 42. Love you. Here we go. Oh, I didn't hit the clapping.
Oh, nice.
Oh, my God. Here we go.